Okay, we're reaching a point where we've got about 5 minutes or so I'd like to open this up for questions from the audience, and we can start here and we'll work our way around.
My question is, for your investments, do you like to invest alone or in syndicate? And what are your ideal qualities in a syndication partner?
We always syndicate. We may do our early, if we're starting up a company ourselves, we may put in, $500,000 and put the CEO in and let him run get the plan sorted out. But that we do as a common investment, buying common stock. And then we will go forward with a syndicate. And the main attribute that we look for, the characteristics that we look in the syndicate partners, is an understanding of the field we're in. So we only invest with life science investors that like this space. Two, we do look at their reserve policies. We do look at what funds they're investing out of and where they are in this particular investment. And we do pay a lot of attention to who's sitting on the board with us and they with us, and the dynamic around that board is really important in the way that we want to coach a CEO and the building of a team.
And I would ditto everything Art said. We're sort of a $3 million minimum, but we still always syndicate our deals. We just think it's the best thing for the company, and we want to partner.
There was a question from
Now, question is, when you're dealing with family and friends, how do you document either equity or the return on investment that you're offering?
Well, the documentation ought to be similar to what you would be doing in later stage financings, because it's really critical to make sure in those early stages that you're following the proper procedures so that you don't run afoul of any corporate laws, and so that you can document and sustain and prove to the later stage investors that you don't have any legal issues that are going to crop up as part of the due diligence process. The last thing you want to have is a legal problem when someone's evaluating whether or not they really want to invest in the business. So you'd want the proper contracts. Return on investment, I don't know if anybody wants to guarantee anything on a going forward basis. You're talking about projections, perhaps. I think you really want to stay away from guaranteeing any kind of a return to an investor, particularly in the early stages.
I guess you could structure the instrument if the CEO was that confident that he wanted to guarantee your note to him.
Yeah, I've just from personal experience, I've never done that, and I've never even promised any ROI at all. And actually, I'm trying to think through it. I don't even think the question comes up to me. Most friends and family, at least in my experience, it's been the investment. My biggest problem has always been telling them I limit the amount each one can put in. And if they've wanted to put in more, I've said no. And it's a tricky situation when you take from friends and family. You got to be real careful, because that's very important. And so I limit their exposure no matter what they say, because they'll push to put more in.
Maybe a different way to answer that too is to make sure that your angels or your friends and family are in alignment with the VCs. We've seen more and more companies issuing, as we've talked about, a convertible note at a discount to what the next round comes in at. So, if we value your company at $5 million, for instance, then those early people will get the $5 million at a bit of a discount, whether that's 20% or whatever. That way, there's no sort of wrangling when it's time to figure out what the valuation is on our end, and, your guys going in know that they're going to get to share in the upside of our round.
But even with that, there's no guarantee on an ROI. No. Because we're still series away from doing a deal.
And just one other small point to add to, attach a nice interest rate for them while they're waiting. Maybe it's 8% or 9%, but add the interest rate in addition to the discount. And that's kind of market.
There's a question from this table here. We've got about another 2 minutes. There was a question here. Woman in the pink. Yeah, on the SBIR front, at least the House up in Congress in Washington, D.C. is attempting to liberalize that again. There's been a prohibition about institutional investors being invested in the company to be able to get SBIR. The House is now wants to change the law so that through a lot of Florida and the Bio organization, trying to get that changed so that you can have institutional investors and still get an SBIR. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're making the right point. This is the most expensive money you're going to acquire when you bring it in to sell capital in your company. It's the most expensive. So I'm assuming you're going to pursue everything as much as you can that's non-dilutive in that regard. And I would add foundations to that in the life sciences. The foundations like the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, the Wallace Culture Foundation, all those foundations will do special things for companies that's non-dilutive.
But I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
A couple of comments and questions. I don't understand the wrangling over evaluating your company early. There's passages you can put in operating agreements, you can put anti-dilution clauses and what have you to compensate. Early stage company has enough problems, much less be right on with value. Question I have in determining which VC to contact and what conduit to use. For example, for the bigger VC, prefer somebody substantial referring a business plan to them? If that's the case, how does an entrepreneur find that conduit to introduce their business plan so that the VC will take the time to look at it?
I'll let the VCs answer that one.
Well, and I'll answer the wrangling offside, because it's a good answer, but there is an answer, as you might imagine. We've done roughly between 5 and 7 investments in the last 4 years. One of those came from an intermediary. All the other ones came from direct referrals. So I would highly suggest that somebody like Les or John Igo or John Cole, for instance, to name a few that you would know, sends us your deal. And because we look at 1,000 business plans a year, so the closer you can get to the top, the better.
Yeah, and I would echo that. We screen our deals. We have what we call red files and regular, and those red files are all referred deals. Kathy sends me something, it's guaranteed it'll be looked at quickly, so we give her an answer quickly. If I get it from someone I don't know, it's going to be, it's going to process, but it's going to take a longer time.
I think we've reached the end of our time. So we get the other panel up here. Thank you very much. Appreciate your attention, and please feel free to grab any one of us afterwards if you have follow-up questions. Thank you.
Have a good trip
You're
back.
the one that's going to get the questions. You're like, okay, I want to know.
So did you like the Brazilian food?
Bye.
Wasn't that great?
You must know...